every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson the Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky calls for NATO states to step up aid for Kiev's military. He says Western allies are taking too long to make key decisions. Australia and New Zealand to send planes to New Caledonia to evacuate their nationals from New Caledonia as deadly riots sparked by electoral changes by France continue. Large crowds of Iranian mourners gather in Tabriz for the funeral procession of President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash near the Azerbaijan border on Sunday. Authorities in India's capital order schools to shut early for the summer break as temperatures hit above 47 degrees Celsius, with Delhi being gripped by a severe heat wave. And thousands of protesters gather and lawmakers jostle outside Taiwan's parliament against the opposition bill to widen parliament's scrutiny of the government. Hello and welcome. We begin with a focus on Kenyan President William Ruto's state visit to the United States. President Ruto is the first African leader to be hosted for a state visit since US President Joe Biden was elected in 2020. President Joe Biden will host President Ruto at the White House on the 23rd of May. The visit by Ruto marks 60 years of US-Kenya diplomatic relations. Kenya is a key U.S. ally in Eastern Africa. The two nations share strong military and defense cooperation. As the war in East Africa against al-Qaeda affiliate al-Shabaab intensifies, the two leaders are set to discuss ways to bolster cooperation in trade, security, energy, health, climate, and technology. Now, the White House said the visit will strengthen shared commitment to advance peace and security and to stand together in defense of democratic values. Ahead of visiting Washington, Kenya's President William Ruto and First Lady Rachel Ruto visited Atlanta, where President Ruto delivered a speech on governance and democratic values. But a key point of talks between William Ruto and Joe Biden will be debt relief for Kenya. One of Washington's objectives in scheduling the high-profile visit by the Kenyan leader is countering China's rising influence in Africa. Kenya has reportedly been grappling with acute liquidity challenges, and China is Kenya's biggest creditor. So the US is urging China and other big creditors to offer relief to debtor countries. Washington is also urging international financing institutions to offer low-cost financing to Kenya and other African countries. Last month, the US warned China and other countries that have lent extensively to low-income nations against free riding by collecting debt service payments and curtailing follow-on loans. US and its Western allies have been frustrated about Beijing's slow pace of debt relief deals. For over 20 years now, China has systematically increased its involvement in Africa. Beijing has been doing this through tactical use of its Belt and Road Initiative, using infrastructure investments to make inroads across the continent. Beijing remains by far the largest lender to African countries. China is also Africa's largest two-way trading partner and far exceeds the US-Africa trade. Now, the US has repeatedly expressed concerns over China's military activities in Africa. So will Joe Biden's meeting with Kenyan President William Ruto aim at countering China's growing influence in the continent? Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Herman Manyora, a political analyst and a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, who is joining us live. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Can we see this state visit as a US attempt to counter China's growing influence in the African continent? Unfortunately, we lost Herman Manyora there. We will try to get him back. But for now, let's move on for our next story, where we move along Africa's Red Sea coast, where a country named Eritrea lies, which is over the years has earned a rather controversial nickname. It is called Africa's North Korea. Now, like North Korea, Eritrea does not have nuclear weapons. But both Eritrea and North Korea have been sanctioned by the UN. But Eritrea was only subject to an arms embargo, which was lifted in 2018. Now, ordinary Eritreans enjoy much more exposure to the outside world than North Koreans. Satellite television is common, and internet, though slow, is apparently uncensored in Eritrea. The African nation has also picked fights with its neighbors, but unlike North Korea, it does not pose an existential threat to any of them. Now, aren't these reasons good enough for why Eritrea is not like North Korea? Well, the similarities are even better. Eritrea is a country that has been emerging from decades of conflict. It is located in the Horn of Africa on the western coast of the Red Sea, bordered by Sudan, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. Now, its liberation war from neighboring Ethiopia began in the 1960s and only ended in 1991. It was one of Africa's longest-running conflicts. Then Eritrea fought a war with Ethiopia between 1998 and the year 2000. It was one of the bloodiest in African history. The war ended formally only in 2018. Now, over the past decade, so many people have left Eritrea that it is called the world's fastest emptying nation. Eritrea and North Korea are both one-party states whose rulers have no appetite for criticism. President Isaias Afwerki is the only leader the country has known in over 3 decades of independence. His party is the only one allowed. He controls both the executive and the legislative branches. Human rights activists say that he has turned the country into a dusty prison camp. Eritrea, like North Korea, became a military state. It has a government-supported compulsory system of indefinite conscription. Now, according to reports, there have been several instances of torture, violence, and forced labor. Even young school children are not exempt from the abusive system. The United Nations says it amounts to slavery. Fearing that the citizens may flee, the Eritrean government locks them in. To leave, a conscript requires a permit, which is almost never granted. The only alternative left is to escape, but this comes with the risk of being shot by having to pay a bribe. Now, this quite mirrors North Korea's model. Now, both the countries are also closed economies, with almost no private sector, preaching virtues of self-reliance, with trade abruptly stopped and a once invisible border replaced by an iron curtain. Eritrea's long Cold War with Ethiopia had effects similar to those of the Korean War. Prolonged conflicts and severe drought and adversely impacted agriculture. Now, there are no independent media outlets in either of the countries, and the government controls the narrative and tightly restricts access to information in both Eritrea and North Korea. Now, in 2021, Reporters Without Borders ranked Eritrea as the worst offender globally, surpassing even North Korea. But unlike North Korea, Eritrea does admit to some of its policies being repressive. However, the government says the policies were a temporary response to threats from Ethiopia. Now, it says peace between the neighbors will bring in change for its people. Can Eritrea get this label of being called Africa's North Korea gone anytime soon? From Eritrea, now on to Cameroon. For 7 years, the country has been gripped by a civil war, marred by clashes between government forces and armed separatists. Now, while Cameroon does face multiple crises, the Anglophone conflict is the most damaging. Also known as the Ambazonia War, the conflict is in Cameroon's English-speaking northwest and southwest regions. Caught in the middle of the civil war is a singer, Afro soul star Libyanka, who has lived in the United States for most of her life, is from Cameroon's Bamenda. The once thriving city of Bamenda is now the heart of the civil war. In 2022, Libyanka gained global recognition with her hit song People. Her social media bio proudly proclaims it is Libyanka from Bamenda. But in recent weeks, the singer has been receiving death threats for performing with a Cameroonian flag. Several of her social media posts, too, have pictures of her with a Cameroonian flag during tours. The singer was forced to postpone her North American tour last month due to threats. Libyanka received over 50 threats from Cameroonian separatist group, the Umba Boys, who want English-speaking parts of the country, like Bamenda, to become an independent state. For Libyanka, waving her country's flag during her live shows was a gesture of reverence for her heritage, but the separatist groups see it as support for the country's president, Paul Biya, the 91-year-old who has been in power for 42 years and might seek re-election next year. The Cameroonian president is one of the longest-serving leaders in Africa. Cameroon's Ambazonia War started in 2017. It has killed over 6,000 people and left over 700,000 displaced. But the deep rift goes back all the way to the country's colonial history. After the First World War, the French received a much bigger size of the colony, while the English got smaller regions. In the 1960s, when Cameroon became independent, the Anglophone region demanded a separate state. But a united country was created, which the Anglophone region called a sham. Outcries continued over decades, but massive protests erupted in the year 2016 after Francophone judges were appointed in the English-speaking regions of the country. Now, the protesters also opposed the imposition of French in classrooms and as a default language for national tests. Clashes broke out between security forces and protesters, many of whom were imprisoned. In 2017, thousands of protesters took to the streets, waving blue and white flags for Ambazonia. Now, that year, the separatists declared independence, and since then, government forces and separatist groups have been locked in a deadly conflict. In addition to fighting within the country, separatists have now taken to aggressively threatening civilians and popular figures who do not appear to be supporting their secessionist agenda, making apolitical popular artists like Libyanka a target. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid stories of coups and crises, we get you tales of hope and positivity that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Imagine a place where community spirit is so strong, it can rebuild history every year. Welcome to Mali, where thousands gather annually to replaster the great mosque of Grange, the world's largest mud brick building. This isn't just any old maintenance task, it's a festive, cultural celebration that brings everyone together. Our final report explains.
In the African country of Mali, the community bonds are strong. It is evidenced by their collective engagement and activities. One such activity is the annual replastering of the Great Mosque of Grange, the world's largest mud brick building situated in the heart of the nation. Each year, thousands of Malians gather to safeguard their cultural heritage. Hundreds of people participate in the ritualistic plastering process, which is crucial for maintaining the mosque's integrity. During the event, responsibilities are divided among the crowd, with men climbing the mosque walls to add mud, while women and children ensure a steady supply of water and clay. People every year look forward to this activity.
I came to help. I carried water here. May God give us the chance to see this activity next year.
This annual effort is essential. A new layer of mud must be applied before the rainy season every year. It's to prevent the building from falling into disrepair. It draws tens of thousands of tourists annually. The replastering serves not only as a practical maintenance task, but also as a symbol of peace for the locals.
The plastering of the mosque is a symbol of peace. The poor, the rich, everyone is here for this activity. We will continue this tradition from generation to generation. We will pass it on to our children, and they in turn will do the same. Each year, the organizers choose a leader from among us. This plastering protects the city of Grange.
However, the significance of this communal effort is underscored by the precarious state of the mosque. The building is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it has been on its danger list since 2016. Only those sites are added to the list that face an imminent danger. The threats can range from rapid urban or tourist development projects, land destruction, and rising sea levels. Mali in particular has faced political conflicts and civil wars, with Islamist insurgencies spreading across the country over the past decade. The gravity of the situation was highlighted in 2022. Mali's main military camp was attacked by Islamist militants. It nearly jeopardized the annual mosque replastering event. In 2020 and 2021, Mali saw violent military coups. And ever since the military junta took over, the woes of the people have worsened. From the cost of living crisis to their economy taking a dip, Mali has witnessed it all. However, amid political conflicts and civil unrest, people come together to preserve something that's their own. They don't shy away or think that there is danger. They take pride to give back to their society.
A lot of people talk about insecurity, and we hear that we can't come to Grange because there is insecurity.
The annual replastering of the Great Mosque of Grange in Mali stands as a testament, a proof of the community's unwavering spirit of community and resilience in the face of adversity. Despite the region's tumultuous history marked by political conflicts and militant insurgencies, the collective effort to safeguard this UNESCO World Heritage Site symbolizes the deep-rooted commitment of the Malian people. They want to preserve their cultural identity and heritage to ensure that their shared legacy endures for generations to come.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching and goodbye. reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. South Africa goes to the polls on the 29th of May. I will track the election and bring you ground reports. Is it the end of the road for the African National Congress? And will former President Jacob Zuma stage a dramatic comeback? From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost.